you ever felt.
Are you listening?
Hello, my people, and welcome into my channel. This week, we'll be starting a new Dynasty show, and it's going to be called Dynasty Market Watch. We're going to do week-to-week updates on different players, positions, team builds, things like that. Basically, take a look and kind of like the redraft look, but focus more on Dynasty because Dynasty is a very underserved market, and it is my bread and butter. I've been going strong in Dynasty for 3 years. Over half my portfolio is Dynasty, so I'm very much Dynasty focused. But yeah, I wanted to kind of reach into that market because it seems very underserved and there's not enough content in there. And I thought, I could jump in, give my 2 cents, and see what you all think. So for our week 9 watch, what I wanted to jump into, let's talk about running backs. Those are the big dogs that everybody builds teams around. They love. They hold the most value besides quarterback. See where the market is with players and kind of go from there on team builds. What do you do if you see value discrepancies? And go from that part. I was on Keep Trade Cut, everyone's favorite Dynasty resource. In particular, I like it because it gives you the here and now in the moment, whereas places like DLF and other like trade services and calculators, they don't update as quickly. So it doesn't give you the up to the day, and you'll notice it kind of lagging in values and things like that. So I know, depending on who you talk to, KTC is not everyone's bread and butter, but it gives us in the moment, which is perfect for redraft because it gives us kind of like a redraft take, mix it with Dynasty, if that makes sense. And I saw that the running back one was for rookie Kenneth Walker, aka Nick Chubb 2.0, and it literally blew my mind. I was like, how in the world is Kenneth Walker RB1 when 2 months ago, no one wanted this guy? So what changed? How did he jump up so much? And where are we going from here? So when I went to KTC, I saw Kenneth Walker and I was like, that's interesting. So basically it's a tier 7 is like that first tier. So you have Walker, you have Barkley, you have Taylor, you have McCaffrey, Etienne, Brees Hall, and Swift is like 6, but I would put him in there. So it's kind of weird to look at. And my issue with Walker being as high as he is A, what's his ceiling? B, can he ever reach that? And C, how does that help you if you're trying to contend versus reloading? So for Walker, I was pretty floored because 2 months ago, he was the RB 20. 20 is like, I'm not kidding you. On September 28th, he was RB 20. Like that's and his keep trade cut value was 4,461. It's currently 6,530. That is a monumental gain. That's more than he's ever been. Even back in March when he was like, that's draft season, he was at 4,600. So he pretty much hovered around the same price. He tiered up and down. But realistically, like, is he worth the RB1 cost? I would love to hear an argument for anyone tell me why he should realistically be the RB1. I know the case. He's young. There's like very few good young running backs. We lost Javonte. Taylor's hurt. Brees is donezoed. J.K. Dobbins is out. It's all of these guys, right? The guys we were counting on, Cam Akers has been a whatever, right? So it really creates this weird dynasty space for all the heavy hitters, the performers, like the Christian McCaffrey, the Saquon Barkley, the Austin Ecklers, the Josh Jacobs, even Nick Chubb. They're older. So I heard Peter Howard say the average age of top 12 running back this year is looking like it's going to be 25. That's really old. That's like, and yeah, it screws up values completely. So I wanted to kind of dive into team builds and running backs to invest in, running backs not to invest in. And based on those team builds, what are you doing? I think Brees Hall is the biggest one that stands out by far because he was the prince that was promised. He was the king. He was everything we wanted, and he was beginning to cook, and his season kaput, like ACL, down he goes. Thankfully, it's not super severe ACL. It's not as bad as Javonte. It's not as bad as J.K. Dobbins. It's not as bad as Saquon Barkley like the years past. So, thankfully, I think we could breathe sigh of relief. But on a contender, what are you going to do? So my thought process is I had him on 3 contenders. I shipped him out. I was like, listen, I want the championship to this year. The value is still incredibly high. I can get someone similar value who I know is going to produce well. I can get a younger guy, I can get an older guy. So I made a couple moves based on my contending teams because I didn't want to wait and remove the chance of my title. Like I was like, no, like I had a top 2 team. All the points were there. Like everything was cooking. So I was like, why do I want to give up that chance at a title? I was like, I don't. Like that's what this game's all about. And I know people are like, don't trade Brees Hall. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like you could always buy back in. His price isn't going to go back up. Like he's still extremely highly valued. I thought his value would actually drop more than it is, but no, he's valued very high. He's currently the RB6, and you can see it very much plateaued. Like he's gained a little bit of value. It dropped. So he was at 7,500, which is massive value for a running back. Like that was the RB1. He dropped down to 5,200, and now he's back up to 6,000. So he's basically in the same price range as ETN, which he's a little bit lower. And then there's like a tier cutoff to Swift. And like Swift's issues, all his injuries and all that stuff. But like with Hall, my thought process was no, I want to win. So what I did on my contenders is I sent him and a second for CMC and Keenan Allen. And I was like, yeah, dude, like this was when the injury happened. This was before the CMC trade happened. And I was like, you know what? Like, I still believe in CMC. And then he got sent to San Francisco and people were scared. And I was like, no, that's even better. Like, it's Christian McCaffrey to better offense. So, like, it worked out brilliantly. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll take the second round. Like, I don't care about a second round pick on a contender. It's a late second. Whatever. I'll take it on Keenan Allen. He's going to die on my roster. I know what that is. Like, that's worth a shot. It's actually funny, speaking of Keenan Allen. I'm in a 32-team Dynasty League. It's bananas. The trade market is nuts. So, like, you have 32 first-round picks. So, first rounds have the widest range of outcomes as possible, right? So, I sent out my first. I'm the 1 seeder now. So, that's the 32nd projected pick. I sent that out for Allen. I got a counter of my first and my second, which is like pick 64. And I was like, yeah, like, I'll do that deal every time. So, you have to like know your market, and the 32-team one is it's the wildest market I've ever been a part of. Like it's values are insane. It's because people can't really put the correct value on picks. So if you know how to correctly value those picks, you can make a killing in that. And like that's probably my best team because of it. I lost Brees Hall in that league, and what I did was I sent him for ETN plus Curtis Samuel, and this was the week before James Robinson. Like this was that week right after he balled out and James Robinson was still in town. And I was like, yeah, let's go get ETN. Like, he's the young guy that's pass catcher. Like, he has all those tools and he's explosive. Like, he's a lot of fun to watch. So I sent Brees Hall for him and Curtis Samuel. And the guy took it because the guy's rebuilding. And I was like, take Brees Hall. You're going to love him. Like, that's the asset you want to give to a rebuilder, right? Because next year they're getting the reduced price. They're also getting a chance to get a better pick. So, like, that's a win-win for a rebuilder, like, because there's no points against, right? So as long as your league is all minimum points or maximum points for, like, go get those guys, right? But on contender, I was like, no, dude, I want to win this year. So I'll happily take ETN, like, in the injury and all that, and get Curtis Samuel as a flex play and go from there. It worked for both of us. And the ETN thing worked out perfectly. Like, I don't really think James Robinson was doing much anyways, so I know it's a perceived value boost for ETN because if you look on Keep Trade Cut, he's skyrocketed. And it makes sense. People are like super excited, but he's had the craziest season. Even if we go back to like October, ETN was RB18 on October 5th. And now he's RB5. It's wild. So his price bottomed out on Keep Trade Cut on October 5th at 4,328 points. He's currently at 6,306 points. Like that's 2,000 points. That's monumental. Because people were so scared of James Robinson, and I was guilty of this. They were like, nope, it's not happening for him. But what happened? Over time, he got more comfortable because he's technically still a rookie. Like, he's never played a snap before this year. So they trusted Robinson. Oh, yeah, and by the way, James Robinson was awful. He's cooked. Like, do not invest in James Robinson. It's that Achilles injury. This also goes for Cam Akers. Like, I know the Achilles injury got a shot and a boost, but nah, dude. Like, I'm out on Achilles running backs. It's a disaster. They have not looked good when they return. There's no explosion. Like, James Robinson looks nowhere near the same player. And it's incredible that he came back. Like, we should be happy for him. But you should also recognize, like, he's not a good running back anymore. And maybe he gets better. But that's a whole nother thing with, like, injured running backs. There's injuries you can like come back from as a running back, and the ACL, depending on who it is, or it's like an Achilles. And this is also why I don't have any Dalvin Cook, because of the concerns with that shoulder. I just don't want to take the risk. And also the ceiling is not as high. So if I'm getting a player who doesn't have as high as, like, let's go to ETN, for instance, or Christian McCaffrey. No one has a higher ceiling than Christian McCaffrey. Like, that's... And you could say Austin Eckler. Well, yeah, Austin Eckler is living in the perfect world right now. There's not a single wide receiver. The tight end's been hit or miss. He has been like the number one wide receiver on his team. And Justin Herbert's just checking it out left and right. And that's why he's... What I call Austin Eckler is Austin Eckler demon mode whenever they get a negative game script, because it's the greatest thing to watch. The quarterback will just check it down. Eckler, 5-yard pass to Eckler, 10-yard pass to Eckler, 8-yard pass to Eckler. And you're literally just watching this like, oh yeah, that's 6 points just on 3 plays. Like, it's gold. So yeah. Funny thing is with Eckler, he's on pace to break Christian McCaffrey's record from 2019 from like receptions. It's bonanza. It's wild. But back to McCaffrey and Eckler and those guys and those producers, it's a great thing to see. And it's kind of hard for a lot of people to kind of reconcile giving up the youth and going after the production. But I, for one, like, I don't mind doing it. It's particularly now in Dynasty, because those young running backs aren't producing. Look at Jonathan Taylor. If you have Jonathan Taylor, the 101, like this year in redraft, like, you're so devastated, you're disappointed. I haven't seen one team in Dynasty that has Jonathan Taylor that's a contender. He's like killed teams because he was such a focal point of your teams. It's been a disaster. It's been like teams that had McCaffrey last year or Saquon the year before, where you were so like trusting on that talent, and like your whole team was wrapped around that player because you spent so much capital. Like, they're such a focal point of your team. When they miss, it's devastating. And it's the same thing where you have those elite quarterbacks. Like Justin Herbert, he's not been that good this year. Like, he's been fine, but it's not what you expected when you're playing QB3 prices, right? That's the problem. And that's a whole nother time for when we talk about quarterbacks. But it's been very interesting to see how the Dynasty market has, like Josh Jacobs, for instance, he got to the point this year where no one wanted Josh Jacobs. And I was never a Josh Jacobs fan, but his value cratered so much. I'm like, what are we doing? So like, his value was 3,300 points. I was like, dude, he was RB30. You could get him for like just a random second round pick, no problem. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take him in startup. I got him in the 9th round of a startup. Like, we did a summer startup. People wanted nothing to do with him. I was like, I'll take Josh Jacobs. Like, I don't, like, you're getting starting running back. And I know everyone was so worried about like the coach, and you're just like, yeah, it's fine, dude. Like, Zamir White, he's fine. He's not that good. And Mir Abdullah, like Brandon Bolden, those dudes are just like, they're not that good. And shocker, the first round running back, teams are pretty good at this. Like, Jacobs is balling out, and he's finally getting that production. So it's going a lot better than I can imagine for Jacobs, but at his reduced price, like, this is where taking players out of it and just looking at values, where you're like, the name, you remove the name and you just focus on the player, their skill sets. And if like the value absolutely tanks or it skyrockets to the point where you're like uncomfortable, that's where you need to buy or sell. And a lot of times it's going against the market, because if a player's skyrocketing, everybody wants him. Or if this running back is like cratering, nobody wants him, right? And this is the whole Najee Harris thing, where Najee Harris is in the dump. Nobody wants to touch him. And yeah, he's still giving you, he's giving you like RB2 production. It's not pretty, but it's passable. And you could get him for dirt cheap right now. So it might be something that you want to focus on. And I know you're saying like, Najee's not that good. I get it, but he's a round one running back. Like, those guys are going to hold on. And unless you think he's just that bad where he's going to be out of the league, like, go kick the tires on Najee. You can get him for dirt cheap. In my home league, someone had Najee. They traded a boatload to get him. This was a few weeks ago, and they were so just devastated by the production. They flipped him for Ken Walker the week before he went off, and they are so thrilled with how that went. And it was a rebuilding team that bought in Najee, and I messaged the guy. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you taking on Najee right now when your team's not winning? You're giving up the younger running back who like has the profile of being a very good running back. Like, what? And he was just hooked on the name cachet. And he's like, yeah, I made a mistake. Like, I shouldn't have done that. But like, we get caught up sometimes. We make mistakes because we fall in love with players, or you fall in love with a hype, and it totally derails your season. So what I wanted to get back to off my tangent there is really with team builds, getting players that align with your team build, right? So like this is why I know everyone will say buy Brees Hall everywhere. Yeah. But on contender, I don't want Brees Hall because the price I'm paying is so significant. I would rather go move that production into a piece that's helping me now and in the future. So this came up on Twitter today. There was a big argument about Javonte Williams or like Dameon Pierce. And the whole issue, the problem with Dameon Pierce is he's a day 3 running back. And it's like a nightmare situation because day 3 running backs, like it's literally not for long. Like they get replaced left and right. We've seen it. Saw James Robinson replaced by Travis Etienne, like Elijah Mitchell. In comes in Christian McCaffrey. He's gone. It's like, oh yeah. Remember Chris Carson? They freaking drafted Rashad Penny the first round the following year after he hits. Like teams don't trust day 3 running backs. And sure, you could end up with like an Aaron Jones or an Austin Eckler or one of those guys, but it's so rare. And if you have a bunch of teams, like, are you really willing to like risk your portfolio on those guys? Now, if you're a contender, yeah, just write it out because he can help you win a title, but flip him the moment, like the moment the season's over. And a rebuilder, you should have no interest in that type of asset because if they get obliterated on your roster, the value gets crushed, like that kills you even worse because you're trying to get out of a hole and that value loss is going to put you in a deeper hole. So it makes Dameon Pierce kind of like the one of the weirdest assets to buy. The way I'm looking at him is I'm treating him as an older running back as opposed to a younger running back because you know how older running backs are replaced all the time, fall off a cliff, stuff like that. Dameon Pierce is a good running back. He's not going to fall off a cliff, but he still doesn't give you the lead upside. Like he gives you good production, and he's a good running back. It's very clear, but his skill set doesn't match up with what PPR like the best PPR do. So it's tough. Like he balled out Thursday night. He looked incredible. Like watching the game, you're like, man, Dameon Pierce looks so good. And then you look at his points, and you're like, dude, 13, like. Ugh, that's gross. Yeah, like he's touchdown dependent, which sucks and it's annoying, but you have to know that going in with those guys. So there was a poll on Twitter that somebody put up again today. Somebody that paid a 23 first for Dameon Pierce. They're like, who do you want now? And it was Dameon Pierce, the 23 first. And I was like, the first, dude. Like, why do I want Dameon Pierce? I don't care. I'm just not gonna risk it. Now, if you have enough, like a big enough portfolio, and you want to take a stab on Pierce, feel free for it. But if you're in like one or two like dynasty leagues and you just have a handful, why would you do that? Like that is just crippling. And I get it. Maybe he's your favorite player. Maybe you're a fan of Houston Texans. Like there's reasons, but just get out. Like it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. What's the high end upside? Like does he hold off running backs for years on this rookie contract? Like how good do you have to be to do that? So basically, you're betting on this guy being such a freak efficiency star. Like he's head and shoulders above everyone. And sure, maybe that comes true. But like Houston's its own just like nightmare situation. And who knows how long Lovie Smith is going to be there because they're not going to be good. So he's not going to hold on that job forever. And he's featuring him now. But like what happens? Say they have a second round picks next year, right? And they're looking at Gibbs, or they're looking at Evans, or maybe like Bijan falls on them, right? And it's like, would they like they're gonna pass them up because they have this day 3 running back? Like teams don't care about the day 3 running back, so that's kind of. I know it sucks and it's hard to get around that, but you have to just be like, you know what, I'm just gonna enjoy this player from afar because it's so much better if you just enjoy players where you don't have to invest on such a fragile asset because it drops, it falls, it breaks, it's over for you just like that. Like Elijah Mitchell was worthless. I had him on one roster. So I had one of my contending teams. And this was a team I actually made a trade today for Aaron Jones and Chris Godwin. I sent TJ Hawkinson. It's a half point, like tight end premium. Finally got rid of TJ Hawkinson. I've been trying to freaking trade this guy for years. Finally got him out. And my projected 23 first. So it's like pick 111 right now. And I was like, dude, I'm so done with Hawkinson. And this guy was asking, like, hey, you want to trade? He's a rebuilder. I was like, yeah, what are you interested in? And it took us a while. It took us like 6 hours today because he kept asking, like, throwing random people, like, oh, yeah, throw in A.J. Dillon. I was like, dude, we already agreed to this deal. I'm not going to give you A.J. Dillon for free. So he finally, like, came to his senses, like, all right, we got our deal. Let's do the deal we talked about. I was like, yeah, dude, I sent it. It's in your inbox. He goes, oh, okay. And he clicked to accept it. But it's just like, you sometimes, you know, you find the right trade partner. And that's sometimes the hardest thing. It's not always just like, oh yeah, get this guy in Dynasty. It has to match up. And this is where ideally contenders and rebuilders make such like beautiful trade partners. Go get Aaron Jones on a rebuilding team. You like realistically, like you don't have to offer a first for Aaron Jones. Like he's old. People don't want him. Like you go get him. Same thing with Derrick Henry. Like I know people were like, oh yeah, I gave up. I was talking to one of my buddies and he gave up the freaking 102 for Derrick Henry. And I was like, what on earth are you doing, dude? The 102? Why? You want that over? And like he's competing, and I'm like, dude, what the hell? And somebody else gave up the 103 for Cooper Kupp, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not. Like that's where you kind of have to set what your terms are, what you're comfortable giving up, and don't go so far outside your box where it's like, oh, I'm giving a third. I'm giving a pick I never wanted to give in the first place. Because I was having this huge debate today about Devontae Adams. And this is a whole different situation for wide receivers, but I figured I'd break it in. Where the guys, he's like 11th of 12 teams in the league, right? His team sucks. He's had injuries. It's not going well. He's put Adams on the block multiple times. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'll give you my late first for Adams. Like, let's make this happen. And he thought about it, and he's like, and he counters with my early first that I have from another team, which is 20 points away from being the 101. And I'm like, there's not a chance. And there was also my second in there. I was like, I would do my late first, my late second for Devontae Adams. Like, that's fine. I'll do that deal, right? And he saw this other pick and wouldn't let it go. I'm like, look, dude, I'm not giving up this pick. This pick could be Bijan. I'm not. The chance at getting Bijan is well worth it. He's like, but are you going to give up giving a chance for a title? I'm like, dude, I'm already the 1 seed. I'm already max points for. Like, I don't need Adams. I literally don't need him. My team will win. Like, I have McCaffrey, I have Hill, I have Chubb, I have freaking Josh Adams on this team. And I also have Deshaun Watson. Like, he's chilling, he's coming along. So, in the playoffs, I get a boost of Deshaun Watson. Like, I don't need Devontae Adams. Like, Adams is nice, and I would make the move for him, but I'm not going to pay massively over. And this is the thing that rebuilding teams kind of struggle with, where they want more and more and more. And it's like, no, like this is the fair value for the guy. I'm not going to massively pay this. But if you find someone you can generally get along with your deals, makes it a lot easier. Like you can even go get Leonard Fournette for dirt cheap. And I know everybody's like, oh, he sucks. I'm like, he's still going to give you RB2 production at worst. Like he's not getting replaced by Rachaad White unless he gets hurt. So there's plenty of these older running backs you can invest in. It's just really on if you really want to. Like, would you give a late first for Josh Jacobs? I would. Not everyone might not, but that's something I'd be comfortable doing. It's just all about what you're comfortable with. The one guy who I would not touch, Joe Mixon. For like that's me. I'm never going to invest in Joe Mixon in Dynasty. Like, that just sounds awful. If you look at his expected points, he's literally expected to average 20 points per game. He's literally 5 points below that. Mixon's so inefficient. It's awful. And this was the issue with Najee last year when he's valued as high as he was. I said, is he Joe Mixon 2.0? He's going to live on volume, but just be inefficient king. And that's what he was. The problem was this year, he's got the injury and he's not being good either. So the coaching staff's like, we're not going to give that volume because it doesn't help us, right? So if an inefficient guy loses the volume, it's so much worse because then what you're depending on, it evaporates and they become just a much worse asset. And that's Najee Harris. Like, Najee Harris has been the biggest bust. Like, he was first round pick and he's been awful. So you have to be very careful with these inefficient guys. And this is also David Montgomery this year. Like, he's never been very good. And everyone's like, oh yeah, like David Montgomery, he's gonna live on volume. It's like he will to a point until they get a good running back, and guess what they got? Khalil Herbert is one of the best rushers in the NFL. So what happened to all that volume? It dissipated. And guess what? What do you do with Montgomery now? You're kind of stuck. So this is what you have to know what you're getting into. So if you're going to go after these older running backs, make sure you set a target on the price that you're willing to give up. If someone meets you there, at least like pay market value for them. Like, don't just come in like, here's a third round. Like, no one's good. You know what I'm saying? So go see what market value is. Get close to it. Like, maybe you go 90% of market value. Somebody will probably meet you there and go from there. But there's ways to make it work. It's just all about if you're comfortable investing in older running backs. I am. I don't really care. I do it all the time. But it's not for everyone. Maybe you want to go with the younger guys. I'll give you an example of somebody that has continually done it wrong over the years. So there's a guy in my home league. his team over the years, he's had Jonathan Taylor, he's had DeAndre Swift, he has had CEH. Wait, he also has Travis Etienne. So last year in the rookie draft, he took Travis Etienne, and I told him it was the dumbest decision he could possibly make. And he goes, so he flexed on last week. Like, his team's awful. They're in 11th or 10th place in our league. And he goes, would you all say not to take Travis Etienne? And I'm like, yeah, like, I still stand by that, dude. Like, because he's constantly with the guy that says, oh, yeah, wide receivers grow on trees, right? But the issue is, like, his team was so bad at other positions, like, he needed a wide receiver so desperately, like, or a tight end, because he had Travis Kelce. He moved Travis Kelce. That one backfired completely. It was Noah Fant in the first for Travis Kelce, and he loves first round picks, right? So, like, it seemed like a good deal at the time. The problem was Noah Fant sucks. So you basically just traded Travis Kelce for a first, and that didn't work out. So that's the problem. But I tried all offseason to give him CeeDee Lamb for one of those big 3 running backs. And I was like, if you want to give me ETN, that's fine, but I need it first. Like, the value, like, I wasn't willing to just do straight up this offseason because ETN was coming off the injury. He never played, and his value was depressed. It didn't make sense. He wanted to do, like, Sky Moore, freaking, who's the other guy? Wan'Dale Robinson in a first. And I was like, dude, no. Like, CeeDee Lamb is very, like, he's when he was wide receiver 3, which, by the way, he still is Dynasty wide receiver 3. But it made no sense. I was like, no, dude, like, I need a premium asset if I'm moving a premium asset. Like, I'll do ETN, but there's got to be a sizable plus on there because I love ETN, but I don't know if it's going to work out, right? And obviously it did work out for him. But he refused to move Swift and Taylor. And that actually worked out very well for me because if I had Swift or Taylor, like, my team would be sizably worse this year. And I wouldn't have ended up with Eckler. Like, my team would have gone a completely different route. I would have bought into a wide receiver instead. Like, I would either bought into Adams or, like, cut, like, one of those guys, right? Probably Tyreek Hill is who I would have moved because that team struggled. So that's the guy I would have ended up with, which, you know, I realistically would rather have Tyreek Hill over Austin Eckler, but it's a different story. But just know, like, you can do it wrong just by chasing strictly after youth. Like, you have to have a balance. You can't just be all youth or all vets because they're both such fragile builds. Like, say if you have all the young running backs and you're not getting elite upside, which some of them are finally paying off, but, like, you have to be very careful with how you go about these builds, right? So if you have all these young wide receivers, young running back, young quarterback, young tight end, like, that sounds great and that's good for startup values and stuff, but your team is not going to win. Like, that team is not going to win a title. So realistically, you have to understand, like, does this team have a chance to win? Am I trying to win this year? Then I need to mix in some veterans. Like, that's how you have to go about it. And I've seen this with Dynasty, like, everyone, and this is funny on Twitter, you'll notice people love picks and they love youth. And a lot of times team build gets left out. It's like, oh yeah, and then you see in the comments, like, oh yeah, I have this guy, so I wanted this guy, made a lot of sense. You're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but people don't know that because they don't see your team builds. So they're just going in a vacuum. So, like, those polls are great and all, but you have to take into your team build into account where you're at with the team build. Are you ready to contend? Go push that late first one for somebody. Like, go send it for McCaffrey. Go send it for Eckler. Go send it for any one of those, like, productive. Even Jacobs, he's younger. It's fine. I don't really care. Like, Jacobs. Any one of those guys, if you're looking for an RB, the anchor running back to push you over the top. If you already have your anchor running backs, don't double, triple down, right? Because if they get hurt, it goes down. Go after a wide receiver. Go after a tight end. Go after Travis Kelce. Like, if you're looking for a productive vet, just go get Travis Kelce. He's not super expensive. He's great. Like, you could do that. But we'll focus on that stuff when we get in other positions. But I just wanted to kind of go over running backs for this week, kind of give you where my mindset's at with it, where the building is at with it, and kind of let you guys know my Dynasty brand and how it works. Because I'm very open to moving picks and players. I'm very much, like, not attached to any player in general. Like, I love certain players, like Saquon Barkley and Christian McCaffrey are some of my favorite players of all time. I'll move them at the drop of the hat. The price is right. Like, this is the thing that Dynasty teaches you very well is, like, do not become attached to players. And there's a very good case to make that you should trade Josh Allen now because his value is asinine. Like, you could literally get, like, 8 first-round picks for Josh Allen. And I have Josh Allen on a contending team, but, like, the offer someone would have to give me right now, I would need, like, a Lamar first. I would need like Kyler and two first. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I would need something significant to even like consider moving Josh Allen, because what he's doing is he's single handedly carrying teams to championship. I'm like, that's what he's doing on my one team. But that's a whole nother story, right? But I just wanted to get you in touch with that. And next week, we'll talk to you guys about wide receivers, how to go about building with wide receivers, which wide receivers to target, which wide receivers to trade away, obviously depending on your team builds, and go from there. So thanks again for coming in the Week 9 Dynasty Marketplace, and we will see you next week. Adios.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.